Thank you very much. Happy birth minute, I'm told. It's not quite here yet. We've got about 5 minutes, and when we actually hit that, there's a story about why my actual birth minute is not the same as what's listed on my birth certificate. But I have my toasting rye with thanks to Crystal Fraser and Melissa Guillon for joining that, and got it pre-poured in my Krampus mug, which everything's backwards on the camera, so I get stuff funny. I am told, I am just happy you're born. Thanks, me too. Why, without it, for one thing, my mother would now be very uncomfortable. But the other, thank you, Carl. Carl says happy birthday. The other thing is that I always end up with like 500 happy birthday well-wishings, and that's great. And I'm not telling anyone not to do that if you want to do it on Facebook. But also, anyone who's here that says happy birthday, I can say thank you back, and we can perhaps save Facebook bandwidth. Again, if you want to post happy birthday, feel free. But this is actually an opportunity for me to be a little interactive when people say happy birthday, and I appreciate it. So I thought I'd have that opportunity. Happy birthday from Michelle. Thank you. For those of you that don't know, Michelle Serber gamed with me for years and years and years in Oklahoma before she and her husband moved to Germany, and then they moved back to the States, here to Seattle, so I'm gaming with them again. Carl Gilchrist, I began gaming with, I think we're coming on 35 years ago. I might be missing a little bit, but, and up until me moving out here, it was pretty much a weekly occurrence for 30 or so years, so that's a lot of gaming time. Thank you for the happy birthdays, or say them twice. Indeed. 10:01. I used to make a really big deal out of my birthdays. I mean, into my 40s, I made a big deal out of my birthdays. And I think a lot of that was my effort to try to feel important. And I've done a lot of thinking about that, in part because now that I'm out here in Seattle, a lot of my friends who made a big deal about my birthday just aren't around here. A few are, and that's great. And I've already gotten to hang out with some folks. But I did have, in the years before I moved out here most recently, did you know it's your birthday? Yes, actually I did. Thanks to Charles Demery. In the years before I moved out here, we had parties at my place. I would frequently do what I called a gab and dab, where people would sit around and talk and paint miniatures if they felt like it. We had 30 people show up to one. Thank you, Adam. Adam wishes me happy birthday, Owen. Much love, my friend. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. 10:02, 3 minutes till my birthday minute. So when I moved out here, I just wasn't having 30-person birthday parties, obviously. I don't know as many people out here as I know at home. At home, being Oklahoma, I've lived out here for nearly 4 years now. And I live in Kent, whereas most of the people I work with are up in Redmond. So it's just a bit of a jaunt to do anything with them socially. I mean, I see them at work, we hang out there. But if someone just decides to go hang out for drinks or get together and play video games or something, I'm an hour away. So that just doesn't happen much. Gaming birthdays, preferably with food, are the best, says Kid Frandison. Yeah, Frandison, sorry. Absolutely, and I did a ton of those, some of them over a whole weekend. And Karen Will and Logan, happy birthday, one of my idols. Oh, thank you. Huzzah, may your birthday be filled with joy and fat loots. I suspect there won't be a whole lot of fat loots, although my wife and I have arranged for us to end up with a Switch and Mario Odyssey. We've been waiting for the Mario game because we're sort of addicted to Mario games dating back to like Super Mario and the Super Nintendo. That's not going to show up for a little bit yet, and I'm on deadline, so I'm actually going to be working all day tomorrow, which is one of the reasons I wanted to take this moment now. 10:03. As I said, I will be giving a birthday toast to myself, pre-poured, in my Krampus mug. Once it's my birthday minute, and then I have a short story to tell about my birthday minute, and then I may well hang around here, because this is a convenient way to hang out with people who are in multiple time zones, and I otherwise just don't get to spend a lot of time with. Carl has driven up here 3 times, 4 times, a bunch, and we've gone to Oklahoma a couple of times and I've gotten to see him. But obviously when you live 2 time zones away, that just alters how much time you can spend with people. So it's nice to be able to speak to multiple people all at once, say hi, that kind of thing. 10:04, we're almost there. So I just had to sort of adjust my thinking on what a birthday meant, and I sort of take it as an opportunity to think about my past year and where I want to be and what's going on in my life, the good stuff, the bad stuff. It's sort of a check moment now, more than it is an opportunity to stuff cake in my mouth. I like cake, but I've eaten plenty of cake. I don't need much of it. Keith Capella says, I've taken to calling it Owen Midnight Minute. That's fair. And here we are, 10:05 Pacific Standard Time. That is midnight, 12:05 a.m. Central Time, since I was born in Central Time. Thank you all for the happy birthday wishes. Pardon. And that is a lot of rye. So here's the story about 12:05 a.m. My birth certificate does not say 12:05 a.m. My birth certificate says like 12:20 a.m. And my other mother always told me that she knew what my birth minute was, because when I was born, the doctor, who's the one that wrote down the time on the birth certificate, had to clean me and check me and deal with the umbilical and run tests and slap my butt and make sure I was screaming, all of that stuff. And that took a while. And he took care of all of that before he looked up at the clock and wrote down the time. And that's perfectly reasonable, right? The exact minute doesn't, for the most part, matter. That the baby is healthy, that matters. But my mother says from where she was laying in the hospital, there's a clock right across the wall. And she was pretty sure she knew the exact moment when the birthing process was over. She was more directly involved than the doctor. She didn't have anything to do right afterwards, unlike the doctor. So when she was like, okay, birth is over, she looked up and it was 12:05. And she always used to joke that even when I was a child, I would frequently wake up at midnight or just after midnight. And she's of the opinion that my circadian rhythm is just built to the idea that my day starts at midnight. That's not quite true. The fact of the matter is, if I am on my own rhythm, I will go to sleep between 5 and 8 a.m. So I usually get up at like 3 to 7 p.m. rather than midnight. But I just do cycle quite a bit compared to normal. So that's the story. It's not a huge, long, or fascinating story, but it does allow me to breathe out some of the vapors of my own toast. Thanks, Wayne. I got a happy birthday Owen from Wayne Tripp. And I just thought I'd hang out. I did this yesterday. Just clicked the thing on at, I don't know, midnight, I think it was. So even later than this, didn't write anything, didn't invite anyone. And I was surprised how many people showed up and said hi. So I thought I would give it a go. I am bothered by how much my glasses are askew, and I don't seem to notice during the rest of the day. And that's it, right? I just wanted to hooray for repeat successes. Thank you. I don't have anything planned for this evening, so this could get really, really boring for people really, really quickly. I don't have anything in particular planned to talk about. If people have questions or things they want to talk about in the chat, by all means, throw me a question. I'm not going to say ask me anything, because especially given how much I just imbibed, I'm going to be very cautious to make sure I don't say anything I shouldn't. But certainly this is a hanging out opportunity for me, and it's a live one. So for those of you that know that Wes Schneider moved on from Pfizer to other opportunities earlier, I saw Wes earlier today. We did lunch. I'm happy to say he's looking well. And he says hi to everyone. Hi, Ellen. And that was also a nice sort of just pre-birthday treat. It's always a little weird when my birthday's on a weekend. I loved that as a child because I could do fun stuff for the weekend and have a party and everyone would come. Once I was an adult, I was like, oh, I like Saturday anyway. So it's not extra special as much because it's my birthday. Happy birthday, you glorious beast, you. Thank you, Robert. Birthdays are weird for me. I was really, when I was in my 20s, I was very, very nervous about turning 30 because it seemed like 30 was a period where sort of my youth would be over. And now that I am, as of 4 minutes ago, 47, I'm sort of chuckling at the idea that 30 represented the end of my youth. And I'm sure that when I'm 57, I'm going to look back on 47 and go, oh, you sweet summer child. But I had not accomplished a lot in my 20s. My writing career really took off in the late 90s, and that was all magazine stuff. So as I was moving towards 30, I was really like, I have not conquered half of Europe and India at this point, whatever. And I was unimpressed with myself. But then I got a job at Wizards of the Coast in 2000. And so when I actually turned 30 in October of 2000, I was working at Wizards of the Coast. I was working on the Star Wars role-playing game. I was what I think can arguably at the time be called the top of the RPG field. And so 30 didn't freak me out. And then when I lost my job the next year, it wasn't turning 30. I'd already done this and survived. So I've sort of thought about where I am every birthday since, and tried to use it as a moment to take my psychological barometric pressure. See, Kim Franston, I will now be replaying that part of this video to my wife, who turned 30 earlier this year and had the same thought. Yeah, 30 isn't old anymore. I'm not sure 40 is old anymore. At this point, I have some claim to old, right? The gray is very much coming in. But that's much more genetics and hair dye than it is anything else. A lot of people say it's not the years, it's the mileage, because we're geeks and we like Indiana Jones. There's some truth to that, too. Michael Barnicott says, here's to another year above ground. Cheers. Dang, just realized SF doesn't have aging mods. Yeah, actually, Starfighter does not have aging mods. That was an intentional choice on our part. Part of that was our effort to simplify things. The aging rules actually can create a lot of complication for player characters that don't really have a huge payoff. Generally, a campaign does not go through enough campaign time that realistically you're going to change age category, and you're certainly not going to do it more than once in a standard campaign. But it eats up a lot of page count, and it runs into the question of, hey, I'm playing a wizard. I don't care if I'm strong or dexterous, pardon me, folks, or have a big constitution. I like those +2 or +4 to my physical or my mental stats. That was part of it. Another idea was just to say, look, it's the far-flung future. Medical science is awesome. So if you're going out and having experiences, i.e. gaining experience points, you can have your mental attributes go up as you wish, but you can also be kept lean and trim and in perfect health up until the moment that you have used the last erg of life energy from your body and you keel over as a exquisite corpse, which is a literary joke for those of you that don't get it. So we decided to get rid of it. Several people have mentioned it. Obviously, it's not hard to bolt them back in if you want to, but I actually like the game better without them. Wayne Tripp, 50 only makes you care less about what people think about you. Trust me. Well, that's good to know. I mean, 50 is not that far away from me at this point. But, you know, I've got friends that have already hit 50, and none of them have collapsed in on themselves and created a black hole of uselessness. I've got people very close to me in my life who are going to hit 50 in a year or two who will hit it before I do. So there are scouts going out into the 50s and proving. I mean, I know people in their 60s and 70s who are in better health and more active than I am. So clearly there are environmental choices and lifestyle decisions I can make that will affect me at least as much as how quickly I age. Plus, as medical science advances, I remain hopeful that I will be able to simply crack open my noggin and take my brain out and put it in a custom-made, healthy 30-year-old body and not have to deal with my knees or arthritis or anything anymore. So we'll see how that goes. Kim Franston, your tank that you showed us from last night made me think of a question for you. With all the writing you do, how do you find time for other hobbies? And how on earth do you avoid burnout? So your blog on it, but just wondering if you had a go-to hobby to clear your mind. So I have been very clear recently that I have hit full burnout. And full burnout means that I have difficulty summoning any enthusiasm for writing. I'm not doing it, at least on deadline projects, big projects, nearly as much just for fun as I would normally. I'm suffering a lot of mental exhaustion, etc. That happens. I've only hit full burnout a couple of times in my career. I've already taken plans to lighten my workload over the long term. I've got some big vacations coming up in the midterm. In the short term, I need to buckle down and finish the projects I'm committed to, because that's what you do as a professional. And if I don't have fun doing those, in fact, if they are a terrible drag, well, I'm being paid for it, so it doesn't have to be fun. But the question of what do you do to clear your mind? Do you have any go-to hobbies? I still read quite a bit. I've got comfort food novels, if you will, books that I read, not because I necessarily think they're great literature or that they will tell me anything new, but that are just beloved favorite books of mine that I read because they are comfortable. And that can help put my brain in neutral in a creative way. And sometimes I do notice something new, which is nice. I do miniature painting and modeling. I'm not very good at it, but that's okay because I don't have to be. And it's a part of the geek hobby that I've been involved with for a long time that in no way does my professional work overlap that, right? I have not and do not approve miniatures or have to do master paints for pre-painted lines, or while I have worked on miniature games like the Star Wars miniature game for Wizards of the Coast, I did question and answers for it for quite a while. It's not something that eats up my professional time, so I can keep that as a purely entertainment-based thing. And my diesel punk world is something that just as world building I do. One of the things that happens with burnout is that you don't want to force yourself to go do the stuff that you have to do. But one of the reasons I became a professional game designer is I'm going to spend time building worlds and designing games, whether anyone's paying me for it or not. And that can be, when I had a full-time bank customer service job, I was still spending 20 hours a week world building. And no one was paying me for that. Mostly, I was doing articles and stuff at the time. So, where was I? That's burnout, by the way. It's also booze. So, having some of that is totally disconnected from my jobs, that none of my jobs involve this diesel punk setting. I'm not even working on a diesel punk setting for anyone, so it's a different genre. This is a specific world. A lot of what I do with my professional stuff, I have to be very, very careful, right? I can't say, hey, I'm doing a science fantasy game. Let me go look at all the cool things in Shadowrun and show that art to our artists and say, hey, do exactly this, or take those exact ideas, or say, wouldn't it be cool if the Sororitas Adeptus descended upon the world of Shadowrun, and we'll write that. For professional publication, I've got to be very aware of what are my inspirations and where am I being inspired, or taking something in a new direction, and where am I doing a derivative work. But for my hobby, I don't have to do that, right? If I'm just writing about, hey, these are the cool, different walking tank models from 5 or 6 different lines, and here's how I am weaving those images together for my own fun for a setting that I just do as a distraction, that becomes a different mental process. So it's one of the things that I do that helps me feel less overwhelmed. I also watch a lot of anime, and unfortunately, the vast majority of anime I watch has some problematic elements, and that's links to the thing I was talking about with Lensman on Facebook earlier today, that you can enjoy something and still say, that's kind of problematic. That's something that I wish were better, that I think may actually not just not be great, but could potentially bring harm into the world. So some animes I actually are so bothered by those elements that I don't enjoy them, and that's my choice as a consumer, right? You get to choose what you like and don't like. But I also rarely recommend animes to other people, because I think everyone needs to come into that and decide for themselves, what am I willing to support? What am I willing to boost? What do I love? But there's this one thing about it that is so annoying that I think is bad, that I think actually does more harm than good to society as large. So, but I am a fan of the freedom of animated television, that anything they can imagine, they can illustrate. When you're watching a television show or even a movie, there's a budget concern, right? Can we realistically do a 2,000-foot tall mega robot that has a world-destroying cannon for a head? And if it fires that at the planet Earth, can we destroy it? And if we do, what are we going to do with this show next week? In anime, you don't have to worry about what the budget is for the most part. I mean, yes, special effects can still be expensive, and drawing complex things takes more time. But as long as you've got an art team that is able to handle it, it does not matter if we're doing a hyper-detailed close-up of someone's face as a human, or a hyper-detailed close-up of a giant world-destroying gun head, just as a random example. So there's a freedom to that storytelling that frequently hits me in new spots. So I really enjoy watching those, and I think they help bring in an influence beyond the modern science fiction and fantasy and the pulps. I still read a lot of pulps, and I try to sift through those pulps for the stuff that is pulpy and awesome versus the things that are 1930s racism or sexism, or even just super troped, stereotyped storytelling at this point. I remember when I watched the John Wayne movie Stagecoach, and this is a spoiler for a black and white movie from like 80 years ago, but at the end of Stagecoach, the cavalry rides to the rescue. Now, when Stagecoach was filmed and shot, that was not a hackneyed trope that had been done a dozen times, but now it is. So even if that is a cool element of the Western, at this point, if you're doing a Western and you want the cavalry to ride in and save everyone at the end, you have to either put a new spin on that or or accept that you are borrowing not just from a thing that has been done, but a thing that at this point has become a stereotype. So, yeah. Paul J. Mendoza says, same here, bad serial rereader here. Especially growing up, there were books that I would read over and over and over. And there are still books, not all of which or most of which are not great acts of literature. They're just things that speak to me that I find very comforting. And I can get very emotionally invested in a book. I can get very emotionally invested in anything, right? A McDonald's commercial can make me cry if it's the right McDonald's commercial. Star Wars toy commercials have, in the past year even, made me cry. So sometimes I go to something I've read before because it won't have any major surprises. I won't be going along and yell, "Oh, John Ringo, no," and throw a novel across the room. So that's comforting. But also it's a known factor, and it will trigger in me the same emotions it's triggered in me before. So I appreciate that. So those are some of my go-to hobbies. I read, I watch television and anime and movies even. I really like foreign horror films. Specifically, I like foreign horror films of a type that could have been made in the West but weren't. So I'm not necessarily into surrealist French body horror, but if there's a, say, Spanish language zombie movie, and yes, I specifically mean the Rec series, I will watch that. I'll watch the heck out of that. Trade to Busan, I really, really liked. There's a Korean horror movie about a giant mutant fish, which I believe is called The Host. I might have that title wrong, but these are all things I've enjoyed. And again, having a different aesthetic to the movie, to me, really helps keep everything fresh. So I like that. Hi, Danny Goodisman. So I really appreciate people being here for my birth minute. Here in another hour and a half, it'll actually be my birthday here on the West Coast, which doesn't actually make a difference for anything, but there you go. As I said, there's no particular plan for this talk, so it's not like I'm going down a list of subjects. If there's anything that you're curious about, or you've always wanted to ask me, or you hear on the radio and you want to talk about, whatever, feel free to throw out a subject, and we'll see how that goes. So, yeah. And then everyone was silent. Pardon me. I'm going to have to get a little more to clear my throat, which is fine. I have a whole set of these Krampus mugs, which are currently my favorite mugs. So I can just ramble on if no one's got anything to say. I presume. Oh, there are new things. I just missed them. Let's see. Serial rereader. Comfort food's a great descriptor. Thank you. Reading all favorites always feels good. Yep. Thank you for the extensive answer. What's the most exciting thing that you've worked on? Evan Sass says, happy Owen Day. Thank you. Game is wrapping up, so a bit distracted. No problem, man. Hello, Monica. Thank you for joining me for my toast to my birthday minute, which already happened. So Karen Lowe and Logan asked me, what's the most exciting thing you've worked on? And Kim Franson says, in relation to Karen's question, have you ever been pitched a project where you just went, nope, not touching that with a 10-foot pole? So hopefully the most exciting thing I've ever worked on is always the project I just worked on, right? Like Alien Archive just came out. I did work on that. It's got some stuff in it I'm very, very excited by. And Starfinder in general, I was very, very excited by. Honestly, I think the most excitement I ever felt for a project was the Black Company role-playing game, which I worked on for Green Ronin with Rob Schwalb. It's got some awesome material in it. And one of the reasons I was so excited about it is in late 1999 or early 2000, when I applied for a job at Wizards of the Coast with nothing but some magazine credits to my name, there was a series of interview processes. I had to do a design test, and then that set in, and then there was a series of phone interviews. And on one of those phone interviews, one of the questions they asked me was, if you could license any one fantasy property in the world, you don't have to worry about getting the license or what the implications would be or how popular it would be. Just if you could pick anything to make a D20 game out of it, they said it to a D&D game, but I'd already been aware that D20 was a thing. What would it be? And without hesitation, I said the Black Company. Now, honestly, it's possible I should have said the Valdemar setting, which is Mercedes Lackey, which I still think would make a great D20 setting. But I said Black Company. I'm a huge fan of Black Company. And I explained that I thought the 10 who were taken are some of the most awesome and complex villains ever. It's got sort of a gritty military solution to what a fantasy world is like. And even though there is powerful world-shattering magic, at least especially in the first few books, for the most part, the main characters are soldiers who are down in the blood and muck and gunk. And they have some spellcasters with them, One-Eye and Goblin, who are not the earth-shattering, Silence too, to a lesser extent, or not the earth-shattering wizards that sort of control fate. And I thought that made for a really interesting setting. One of the people who was in the room when I said that was Chris Primus, who owns Green Ronin with some other folks. And so a few years later, he contacted me and he said, hey, my memory is that you are a big fan of the Black Company setting. I'm like, yeah, I'm a big fan of the Black Company setting. And I expected him to say, we're doing something like the Black Company setting. But instead he said, we have the Black Company license. We are doing a D20 Black Company game. Do you want to be part of it? I was like, yes! So I was super, super hyped. Hey, Gareth. Gareth Carter says, Mary Owenmus. Thank you very much. So that was, I think, the project that I was the most excited for, because literally for years I had been thinking about how to do that game, and then I actually got to do it. Which also means I got to do things like help figure out what the gods of the setting were like, and how the magic can be handled, and what the limitations of various elder beings are, and a map of where everyone goes, where we had to sort of handwave things and say, hey, this is all taken from military journals. Sometimes they were wrong, and sometimes they wrote things down as lies just in case someone got a hold of their journals. So, but that was a lot of fun. Then Kim Franson asked, have I ever been pitched a project where I went, nope, not touching the 10-foot pole? Yes, I have. I wouldn't say several times, but more than once. And I'm thinking about them now, and I'm trying to think if any of them are anything I'm willing to admit I ever even considered working on. I have, for example, written some literary porn, not under my own name, because money is money. And that went for more than one short porn story. But in the end, I ended up not liking how that project and the money flow in it and the people I was working with worked. I'm not positive, but I strongly suspect that not all of the money that was supposed to be getting divided into royalties is being counted. And I started to really wonder if I wanted to be writing something that I didn't want to put my name on. Because either, I don't necessarily have a problem with porn, but if you're going to say, hey, I don't have a problem with this product, I think porn is healthy and fine, then I think you should be willing to put your name on it. And the assumption going in was that I would not put my name on it, and a nom de plume, if you'll forgive the term, was created for me, and that's fine. But I just didn't like where it was going, so I stopped doing it, and I've never had any regrets in that regard. Nothing else I can think of about even willing to talk to that level. There are licensed properties that I think are just terrible things that I wish didn't exist, and I certainly don't want to promote them, and I think making a game does promote the core concepts of whatever the game is based on. And then there's some things that are pitched that there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but I said I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole because I don't know enough. I have always tried to be very open-minded and trust that, hey, I am capable of researching anything, right? When I was asked how well I knew Star Wars way back when I was being interviewed for a job at Wizards of the Coast, right, I said, well, I know the difference between a force pike and a lightsaber. And that answer was a little flip, but it also meant I knew there's something called a force pike, which is sort of that little twist of, hey, I may not be an expert, but I'm aware that there's a broader continuity. When I was asked at one point by a game company who ended up not hiring me for this job, what do you know about 40K? I was able to say, hey, I know the difference between a Space Wolf and an Ultramarine. The fact is, I didn't know a whole lot more than the difference between a Space Wolf and an Ultramarine. I actually know a little more now. But I have tried over most of my career to know a little bit about every property I can imagine anyone ever paying me to work on, so that I would be able, if I was asked, to say, hey, what do you know about My Little Pony? I know friendship is magic. But there are some of those that are either sufficiently complex or are things that I just don't think I would enjoy delving into, that if I don't have to take that job, I won't. And so there have been a few things like that, even some that have actually become role-playing games, where it's not that I think that it's a bad game or a bad property or that it's morally objectionable or anything, but I just thought, do I want to immerse myself in the minutiae of this world for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and sometimes the answer is no, I just don't want to. When I was working on the Wizards of the Coast role-playing game, the Star Wars role-playing game for Wizards of the Coast, one of the things I noticed about getting approvals, several people, Michelle Stutzman and Seth Johnson, said happy birthday, thank you very much, or happy Owen Day. It's 10:30 here, so in 90 more minutes will be my birthday here in the Pacific time, but we've already celebrated my birth minute of 12:05 a.m. Central time. I noticed that for approvals, if I said, I want to write up the starship that is this pixel right here in this scene in a movie, generally speaking, they go, oh, you want to give us more information about something that already exists? That's fine. Whereas if I said, hey, I want to do a whole bunch of Corellian Engineering Corporation additional starships along this line of ships, sometimes they would say, well, we're not interested in expanding the CEC starship line at this time. So I would literally sometimes bring up like the big fight at the end of Jedi and go frame by frame through a DVD and say, okay, is there anything here that is a smudge, that is a sufficiently differently shaped smudge that nothing that has ever officially been written about it before matches that smudge? I did that for lots of different kinds of things. That's not to say we were never allowed to create anything new, right? I created Hutt battle armor, and that hadn't existed before. And it had been flushed from continuity, but it then showed up in the novel Scourge, which Jeff Grubb wrote, and he had also written the Star Wars adventure where I'd introduced battle armor with me. So it's the only mention I have in an official Star Wars novel is that he mentioned me to some other people in the forward of that. But it was just easier sometimes, especially if we want to do a bunch of stuff for them to approve that. And I suspect that is one of the reasons why sometimes it seems like every single thing in Star Wars, especially in the old expanded universe, has a history, right? This is the hookah that was smoked by these two characters that later ended up with Jabba the Hutt, and then later had a fish put into it, and was then later turned into a bomb. Some of that happens, I suspect. I don't know, because it's easier to get Lucasfilm to say you can tell more stories about this stuff that we've already created because we know what it's like and where it goes. We would prefer that to creating new stuff, at least to some extent. The skull that Luke Skywalker lobs to hit the button to kill the Rancor, we know whose skull that is. So, Kim Franston says, strikes me if you have a healthy pride in your own work and want to put out good stuff, you can be proud of seeing your name on. Probably all writers are like that and have a copy of the first printed product in a place of pride or in their heart. Yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff. But can you say what changed for the SF department when it sold out so crazy fast at Gen Con? Also, happy birthday, fellow Owen. That's Owen Martin. I don't think I can say what changed for the SF development other than a whole bunch more people were paying attention to it, both inside and outside the company. Obviously there are conversations going on about we did a reprint real fast. That changed. We had not originally been planning to do a reprint in anything like that time frame, which means that the sort of thing that you sit around and you consider before you do a reprint, we just did not have time to consider, and that's been talked about a couple times. There isn't anything else that Paizo has announced that I'm aware of from what we're looking at doing sort of in response to that popularity. And we work so far in advance, right? You've got the print window and you've got solicitations to the book trade. Even if we decided the split second we realized that everything was selling more than we thought, that still would not have impacted the next round of products that we haven't even announced yet, because those were already locked in. So it's going to be quite a while before any kind of major adjustment occurs, if there is a major adjustment. Smaller things, it's easier to do, but again, until Paizo announces something, I won't be tackling it in a discussion form. But once it does, right, I might do an Ask Me Anything, or sometimes we do interviews and Paizo Twitch streaming. And for the most part, right, I want Paizo to get to benefit from things I talk about on how things work at Paizo, because that's part of the deal, right? I get to talk about this private material, and Paizo gets to drive people to their Twitch page. So let's see, Wayne Tripp, how hard was it to switch from fantasy to science fiction fantasy? When I first started reading SF, I wasn't sure I could make the transition. Now I'm totally on board, but I wondered how it was for you. So it was easy peasy for me, and a ton of that is because it is science fantasy, which means anything we want to write that science doesn't cover, we can in fact just shrug and say it's magic. And we don't mean it's bad science, we mean it's actually literally magic. My first job my first actual full-time job in the industry was working on the Star Wars role-playing game, which is pretty well science fantasy, right? It's got a group of knights who are actually wizards that have magic swords, who are facing an empire to try and stop an ancient evil. You don't have to throw the Death Star into Mount Doom, but beyond that, it's all pretty simple. And I have kept my finger in watching various forms of science fiction TV and movies and playing science fiction games, so I actually moved that quite easily. Star Wars 2nd Edition got me back into RPGs, says Michael Marcotte. Yay! Thank you. Happy birthday, dude. Thank you. Oh, God. Ha, ha, ha. I'm so far behind, I don't even know what Paul Mendoza's laughing at, but I'm glad I amused people. Kim Friends again. Is there a development space that you'd like to explore more? Not necessarily with any current IPs or where you work currently. Interesting gaps you would like to work on. There are several, actually. There's sort of this dichotomy, in my opinion, between kind of mechanically grounded games where most of what the game about is trying to have a set of rules that work well as a game, and story-driven games where it is mostly about creating an interesting story. Like my two favorite role-playing games right now are Starfinder, for obvious reasons, but I'll use this hand, Starfinder, for obvious reasons. I'm happy I like it. I'm working on it. A lot of it is stuff that I wanted to do, but I will be the first to confess that it's still very much a mechanics-driven game. And Our Last Best Hope, which is a game that my friend Carl Gilchrist introduced us to, which is almost entirely story-driven, right? There's very little mechanically determined by that. There are mechanics and they influence the story. I feel like there's a place where you can have the story be more mechanical and the mechanics be more story-driven. And I'm not saying that is a new space that no one else is in, but I'm saying that I feel like that space is less explored, and I would love to be able to do something where people playing it would be able to say, okay, we're playing this game, here are the rules, here's the stuff we can do, we've hit this benchmark. That benchmark means that we all get to automatically tell part of the story that we're interested in for our character. I've actually been sort of noodling with that a little bit, but one of the risks of burnout is that your brain will do anything to convince you that there's something more important to work on than the stuff on deadline. So I only give myself 5 or 10 minutes tops per day to go, hey, I've just had a new idea for this thing I would like to explore, and I'll jot down just the absolute roughest part of it. But then it's back to the stuff that pays the bills, because otherwise I am cheating the people that have paid me, trusting that I'll get stuff done. Paul Mendoza says that Hut Armor was the laugh. Yeah, I love... Oh, Kim Francis says, sorry, I just keep asking questions. I'll shut up now. No, please don't. You're giving me something to talk about. So if you've got questions, leap right in. I promise. It's great. I just want to give you credit. So Paul Mendoza says Hut Armor was the laugh for. So the way we handled Huts in Tempest Feud is the name of the adventure that Jeff Grubb and I worked on. And I've got some of the story is the Mr. Grubb story. It's on my YouTube channel. One of the things we said about Huts is that Huts tended to have some vice, something that is not particularly good or healthy for them that they really obsess about. So they might be a glutton, or they might really be into Twilight opera, or they might like, boxing rings or whatever. They might be addicted to drugs, and there's a big drug element to Tempest Feud. But I wanted to explore that idea a little further out. So I wanted a Hut who was addicted to the most dangerous game, right? That liked to hunt down and kill sentient beings. So I conceived of this as an obsessive Hut bounty hunter. The problem with the Hut bounty hunter is we've seen Jabba the Hutt move, and he said, next round. You just can't go that far. So the idea behind Hut Battle Armor was to be able to say, look, when the Hutts did not run their own empire, when they did not have slave races, when they were not yet intergalactic gangsters, or sort of more like intergalactic thugs, sometimes they had to do their own dirty work. And in that age, they built powered armor with repulsor lift systems that basically made them mini personal armored lorries or small micro tanks. And that this particular Hutt has a suit of that. And even though everyone else thinks he's a nut job, it means they can hover at a decent speed. And he's got a tripod mount weapon on his shoulder, and he's carrying a force pike. I mentioned force pikes earlier. And that was something that Jeff picked up and put in the novel, although he took, spoiler, this is for the novel Scourge, he took my beautiful, awesome Hutt idea that I worked so hard on, and we got art for, and Daniel Falconer, who worked for Weta for a long time, I'm not sure if he still does, did even cooler art for it as a fan thing. And Jeff took that particular Hutt and had a Jedi cut a bridge out from under him, and he fell to his death. So, that's what happens when someone else gets to write the book. Paul Fincher, happy birthday. Thanks for making my life better with your creativity. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Seth Smith says, the striking dichotomy to me is combat-based RPGs, almost D&D, Pathfinder, Starfinder, Shadowrun, and games that are about social interaction, like Monster Hearts. So it's interesting to see where games put their rules page count. Yeah, I think that's an entirely reasonable analysis. I think there are social mechanics games that are different from story-driven games, and I think that those are both legitimate things to explore. And also, that Hut Battle Armor sounds awesome. I'm glad the Hut Battle Armor sounds awesome, obviously. Pardon me for a sec. There are a lot of people that think Hut Battle Armor is goofy, right? And I sympathize with that. And Hut Battle Armor is not currently canon, because when Disney took over, they said, look, everything that was not on one of the films is not canon anymore. And they brought a lot of that stuff back, the Chiss and Thrawn and tons of it. They're not necessarily in the same way, but at least as of yet, I'm not aware of anyone that has taken Hut Battle Armor and put it in continuity. I also created the Killian Rangers and Killian Lords, and Killian Lords at least are in continuity because the Darth Vader novel that came out right after Disney took over everything has a quote from a Killian Lord. So the Killian Rangers might still not be around, and their Siang Lances and Warp Gauntlets might be gone, but the Lords themselves are still around. Kim Fransden, you worked on Tempest Feud? I hadn't realized you'd been on that one. I'll have to reread my copy. Yeah, so Tempest Feud was an adventure for the Star Wars role-playing game, and it was written by myself and Jeb Krubb. It was one of the biggest adventures I did early in my career, and if you are a fan of that, Jeff, 5 or 6 years ago, wrote a Star Wars novel, Scourge, which is based on the RPG adventure Tempest Feud. Kim also says, I'll admit that I can see your hand from the Starships of the Galaxy, my favorite Star Wars book, so thank you for that one. Yeah. The funny thing is that in Starfinder, I had almost nothing to do with the starships. I was working on other parts of the book. So the Jasons, Jason Bowman initially, and then Jason Keeley, sort of shepherded the starship stuff. Now, sure, when my opinion was asked, or when I was making whatever development pass I made on it, some of the ideas from it might well be from my experience with Star Wars. But the funny thing is that, yeah, I too see some similarities, but that's almost all parallel development, or the Jasons picking up from old things. Moving forward, there may well be more stuff, and I'm so glad. Like the original black and white Starships of the Galaxy was the first print RPG book that I wrote solo, so it's always had a special place in my heart, and on my bookshelves. But I think I actually have one in a Ziploc to keep fresh. But unless this is it, I think it's not. No, that's not. This is something unrelated. But since I've got it, and I'm not doing anything important here, so this is Dead Gentlemen Present an Anachronistic Adventure, The Shadow Menace, which was written by Crystal Fraser and Amber Scott. They did an awesome job with it. But this is actually a Gamers tie-in module that we did, and you can see that the cover is very much an homage to old modules, and Jacob Blackman, whose initial or signature should be here somewhere. Honestly, it should. Well, we credit him on the inside. If it's not, it's probably here somewhere. But anyway, Jacob did the art. And this is in my opinion, awesome adventure that pretty much I just oversaw. Been there, done that, right? That's the level of comedy throughout. That ties. It's a Pathfinder module for the gamers. So I'm very, very happy that this thing's existence. And it's been out for more than a year or so now. And I'm not sure if you can get it other than through the Kickstarter, but obviously I have a copy. Paul J. Mendoza. Oh, nice. I remember the Rangers. Yeah, the Rangers. Oh, hi, Veronica. Veronica Templar joined. The Killian Rangers were our answer to the problem that if you are playing the Star Wars role-playing game during the original trilogy, clearly you want to be a Jedi, but one of the rules that is just sort of an absolute rule is that there are no Jedi during that time other than Luke and Ben and Yoda, and you can't be one of them. So it was an effort to reskin the class and say, look, there aren't a lot of Killian Rangers, and they have to use Sang Lances and Warp Gauntlets to do what everyone else can do with just a lightsaber. Monica Marlowe is singing Happy Birthday all Marilyn Monroe style, but it's kind of lost in text. Thank you. So that's where the Killian Rangers came from, and I thought it was really, really cool. And Kim thinks that Starships of the Galaxy is a really excellent one to be proud of. I'm also really proud of my work on the Saga Edition one, where I did not do it solo. The task of putting that together and finding other people to work on it went to Rodney Thompson, who was working at Wizards of the Coast at that point on the Star Wars line. But he did a great job, and I was invited to come participate, which I had a lot of fun with. We are an hour and 15 minutes from my West Coast birthday, and if I'm still on at that point, I am almost certain to get off. But let's see. It's a different thing. Seth Smith, I really hope that the Wraith Squadron comes back to Star Wars canon. I think there was a character who was a Killian Ranger or a drop out of them. There might have been. I didn't actually keep up with all the Wraith Squadron stuff. I know that Rogue Squadron and Wraith Squadron both have a lot of fans, so it would not surprise me if that stuff was re-canonized. Dan Dillon says, happy birthday, Owen. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it very much. I have mentioned this before, so I'll mention it again. Part of the point of being on here live is that anyone who wants to wish me a happy birthday can do it so that I can just go, thank you, and wave back. That doesn't mean that you are not allowed to post me a happy birthday good wish on Facebook. But I suspect this year I won't actually be able to give a thumbs up and reply to every birthday greeting. So this is your opportunity to not have to put that much effort in. Kim says, Zaga's great too. Rodney and Sterling and you did a good job on that one. It certainly feels like an ancestor in many ways to Starfinder. I mean, I co-wrote the core rule book of Saga, so it is inevitable when I'm doing science fantasy that there would be some in a D20 system, there would be some similarities. Crystal Fraser, hi Crystal, how you doing, Chris? Writes, happy birthday to one of the few people I would not cleanse from this earth. Thank you? No, I mean, seriously, thank you. I know that you will leave both of our wives alone too, because we need them to cook, and then you and I can go wander the ravaged wastelands for barbecue sauce. A few other people I might want to say, but basically I'm okay with that plan. Just give me a date so I don't have other stuff to do. Sorry, Scopus joined. Hi. For those of you who are just joining new, there is no particular agenda here. I just had a toast. Oh, Crystal. I had a toast. Thank you very much. For my birthday minute, which was 12:05 a.m. Central Time. So I did it at 10:05 here. Yes, Kim Franzen says Tyrio is an Antarian Ranger. Yes, and those are much better known and much wider spread than the Killian Rangers. The Antarian Rangers were sort of the commandos of space. Killian Rangers were from a single planet and actually force sensitive. So Kim's quite right. So part of the point is that if you wish me happy birthday here, don't feel like you have to post one on Facebook, even if you normally would, but also don't feel like you can't, right? Whatever brings you joy. I'm not going to be a tyrant about birthday wishes. I just want to give people the opportunity to do it in a venue where I can say, hey, thank you. So, hey, thank you. I'm also just continuing to experiment with this as a format. Sorry that I'm not looking at the camera, but people are, in fact, wishing me a happy birthday. And if I can, I want to hit thank you on everyone. Or a thumbs up or whatever. I'm still just experimenting with this format. Casey Rift, cheer, brother. Thank you, sir. I'm a little weirded out that apparently I can just turn on my Facebook camera and 16 people at 10:48 p.m. Pacific time on a Friday are watching. At a convention, sometimes I can't get 16 people in a room to listen to me, and that's I'm actually saying something that theoretically people care about. 15 people, 2 of you have left. Just back up to 16. Just as soon as I was bragging about it. So I had never, until last night, tried the Facebook Live button, and it seems a weird option to simply sit here and talk. I am betting that 14 of those 16 people have me in the background just to hear my voice drone on instead of having the radio on, and they're doing something important. At least I sort of desperately hope that most of you are getting something useful done rather than simply listening to me, but if I'm wrong, man. Let's see. Kim asks, will we be seeing a live presentation of birthday presents? The only physical presents I have gotten, because, I've like gone to a Brazilian steakhouse and hung out with friends and had drinks. The only physical presents that have actually shown up so far are a plush dragon and a copy of Space Cadet by Heinlein. And I guess I can go grab the dragon. Hold on just a sec. It's already unwrapped, but... Are you done? Hopefully that was the most boring part of this broadcast. Here is a dragon that my sister sent me. That's a beanie baby dragon with big, soulful yellow eyes and a orange scritchable tummy. And then she sent me a copy of Space Cadet, which is my third favorite Heinlein novel. And I don't have a physical copy anymore, so I really appreciate that. Robert Emerson, I'm always watching Owen. Always. But the red light on my camera isn't always on. Seth Smith, I'll throw my hat in the happy birthday ring. Thank you. Paul Fisher. Hey, Paul. Yes. That's a excellent example. It's true that I've got a much bigger pool to pull from on Facebook. On the other hand, it's weird that you're all free at the same time. Wayne Tripp, I suspect you cannot say much, but I have to ask, after seeing the rule changes in SF, is there any chance we'll see those changes in Pathfinder? So, I mean, first of all, obviously, anything that we announced, I have not drunk enough rye to start making major announcements that I'm aware of in other people's lines at work, even if I knew them. I don't know nearly as much about what's going on in Pathfinder as I did before I was doing Starfinder full-time. When I was doing the player companion line, I was pretty well hooked into what was going on because I'd have to do tie-ins, and if there's a new hardback coming out months, I mean, maybe a year before it's out, I have to be planning out, hey, well, how are we going to do a tie-in player companion to that? I don't have to worry about any of that anymore. But weirdly, obviously, some of the stuff you've already seen, right? Like the trap rules and the poison rules and the monster creation rules are all very similar to what's in Pathfinder Unchained. That's where we pulled them from to start that process. And the design team worked with us a lot. They did a lot of work on the book. Other stuff, like if you want to take the hit point and resolve system, we don't even have to show you how to do that, right? You can take the conversion of the legacy rules and just go backwards. I am certainly not aware of any plan by Paizo to do a Starfinderized Pathfinder, because that would just be a weird product, right? You can do Starfinder and just say, hey, plasma carbines aren't plasma carbines; those are just wizard staves. Change the proficiency around and you're done. So, but if there was more going on, no, I absolutely wouldn't be able to say that. Seth Johnson, Facebook loves live video and its algorithm seems to put it in front of more people than the average post. That is one of the things that I've been wondering. So, I mean, I don't know, but if I used this venue and I said, hey, go over to Drive-Thru-RPG and look at the Starfinder line, and we have the Legacy class Witch so that you can play the Witch in Starfinder, all of which is true, so if you want to, you can go there and buy it. Or even I could have a special discount code I could post in this, right, and say, hey, just for the next 2 hours, you can buy Starfinder Companion for 18 cents, which that part's not true. So I'm curious whether or not there are ways that I can leverage the fact that the algorithm loves live video. And, I've seen some of the live video feeds. They're like, currently 10,000 people watching. I have 17. So I'm aware of the difference. But it is not unusual for me to make a Facebook post and not get 17 likes on it. So it also notices if you have them on the friend list or the following list. Yep. Drink more rye then. Done. All right. My 3-year-old has a similar dragon in pink. She's now upset that you've got her baby dragon. Aw. Look. Dragons like to travel and see the world. So you have your dragon. This dragon is just exploring the Pacific Northwest, and when it gets bigger and starts flying, maybe it'll come fly to you in your dreams. We'll see what happens. But for the moment, my sister sent me this one here so it can enjoy the weather. Don't feel bad. Wayne Tripp, can't blame a guy for trying. I could. I'm not going to. Seth Johnson, I like your Smith Lensman post recently. I love Heinlein, despite having ever more issues with the novels as I get older and mature. Yeah, I mean, different novels have different potential issues with them, and I suspect mine for Heinlein are not the same as a lot of other people's. And I have not reread Star Beast, my favorite Heinlein novel, in a long time. and I'm probably going to reread Space Cadet sometime soon. And there are some issues with them that I'm aware of. But that doesn't mean that you can't appreciate the good parts at the same time. There are people that seem to wig out, and they're like, you can't judge this based on modern standards. I'm not judging it precisely. I'm saying, look, we do have modern standards now, and we know that some stuff is just plain wrong, and some of it is hurtful, and some of it may actually damage society. I'm a big fan of the juveniles that Asimov did, set in the solar system, that he originally wrote under a different name, and it's escaping me the name of them right now. But some of those are factually incorrect. And they have forwards in the modern editions that say, hey, some of these space mechanics are factually incorrect. We didn't change them. We just want to note it as you read the novel. I feel the same way about some stuff, right? This is, for example, horribly sexist or horribly racist or horribly incorrect about the psychology of stress. I personally think it's just worth noting that, and then we can analyze what's good and what's bad separately. So when we want to be inspired by these things, we duplicate the parts that are great, and maybe improve upon it. Let's see. Paul J. Mendoza, these alien creation rules in archives have made my GM life much easier. Thank you. That was the hope. I know a lot of people are very intimidated by Pathfinder monster creation rules, and it can take a long time. And I've really enjoyed that I have literally cracked open the monster creation section, looked at the charts, and created a new monster on the fly, taking 60 seconds. And all the numbers are about right. I know what the save DC is. And in my head, I can just decide, hey, this thing has a special ability that it can teleport you 60 feet away if you fail a reflex save. And and it gets 2 special abilities. So in addition to that, I'll give it DR5. And it's bypassed by force damage. Whatever. And then that is an effective creature that I have made up on the spot. But instead of having to worry about, well, this is a magical beast, so it'll have a D10 hit point. So for CR7, it's just sort of backwards in Pathfinder that you've got target numbers you have to hit, but the CR doesn't influence any of how you generate those numbers. So sometimes you really have to do a song and dance. Whereas with Starfinder, you say what the CR is, and that gives you a baseline. And then if you need to tweak it, you tweak it. RC Rift, yeah, enjoy the weather. It's 19 here in Colorado. Yeah, that's cold. It's, I think, 54 degrees here right now. And we might get down to 19 later, but my phone has 4 cities built into it. It's the 4 cities I'm most likely to be found in recent years. Kent, Indianapolis, Norman, and Austin? I think Austin. And I noticed that Indianapolis had sleet today, which, sorry, folks. So we're at 11 o'clock, so we're an hour away, roughly, from my birth time here in the Pacific Northwest. Kim says she seems to have accepted the dragon explanation. Good. Oh, and Martin, how's it living in the Pacific Northwest? I'd considered looking out that way when I had a recent job transition, but I was concerned it would be too gloomy up there. So first of all, I am descended from pale people who only came out at night and otherwise lived in caves. You know when a flash bulb burns out, there's that little bright light? That can give me a sunburn. So I am so white as to be nearly transparent. I don't even have color in my hair anymore. So the lack of sunlight, you can burn on a cloudy day, but I just don't go out that much. So the lack of sunlight is not a major issue for me. And when it's nice up here, which is a few weeks a year, it's super nice. I'm from Oklahoma, and I just got tired of 30 days in a row of the temperature being over 100 degrees at night and multiple weeks of it hitting highs of 114. I don't. If we're above 80 here, that's a heat wave. And most places don't even have air conditioning in houses and apartments, but we bought a couple of mobile ACs, which are like window units, except they are little R2 units that you can roll around and just stick a tube out a window. So you don't have to mount them is the point, and apartments and complexes allow them, unlike window units. So when it gets too warm, we can cool the places down quite nicely, but usually I can air condition just by opening the windows. In the winter, even, it's not unusual for us to have 2 cracked windows because obviously I've got a lot of electronics in the room. And just maybe we might put a fan in one that'll circulate enough air that it's not a big deal. Some people are very affected by the gloom. There's seasonal affect disorder if you don't get enough light. And I do freak out a little bit because during the very shortest days of the year, if I'm not careful, I can get up and go to work on a long day, go to work before the sun comes up, stay in my office, eat lunch in my office, which does not have a window, not see the sun all day, and not go home till the sun has set because it might only be a 9.5 or a 10-hour day or whatever, and I miss the sun for the entire day. That's a little freaky. That will mess with my circadian rhythm. But other than that, I don't have an issue with it. Some people do have trouble, and they can get very depressed with sunlight. I know some of those people. I think a much bigger issue is that it's expensive out here. The closer you are to Seattle, the more expensive it gets. Angela West says, happy birthday, birthversary. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it. Kyle Rutherford, if I was in Seattle and knew about this, I'd take you out to the bar and buy you a birthday shot. Tastes like German chocolate. Thank you. Appreciate it. Situations where there is little sun means you should boost your vitamin D intake. Yeah, I'm not going to get up and get it unlike the dragon, but I got a bottle of vitamin D over there. And I've got multivitamins, which is what I actually normally use. And you can get, full spectrum lights, et cetera, et cetera. There are ways around it, but some people just are more infected than others. And some, it's not physiological. For some, it's psychological. For some, it's just physiological. And for some people, it's both. So it's something to be aware of if you're thinking of moving out here. Someone just hit like on my video. I see these little hearts and fingers go, thumbs up fingers go across the screen. So people are still wishing me a happy birthday on my feed, which is great. For those of you who are new to this feed, I have no grand plan for this. The main point was to toast my birth minute, which was 10:05 p.m. Pacific time, which is 10:05 a.m. Central time for tomorrow. And then in about an hour here, if I'm still on, which strikes me as unlikely, but hey, I've been on 45 minutes already. Sorry, I've been on for an hour and 2 minutes already. If I'm still on here at midnight, I'll toast myself again and say hi to everyone. Happy birthday, Mountain Time! Yay! Toast! Skål! All right. Happy birthversary. Thank you. Chris West, folks. Hey, if anyone needs a good battle map, go buy it from Chris West. He has awesome stuff. So, ho-ho. My wife has entered the room.
What did you just call me?
Sorry, ho-ha. One must get one's characterization correct. LJ's here. She says hi. What is that? Oh my God, it's birthday cake. My wife made a cake and didn't tell me. And milk. Oh my God, that's good. Is that the brownie?
Yeah.
Wow. It's a little rich. All right, so I was wrong. I am having birthday cake. It is tradition. Paul Fisher, gonna go try and sleep. Have a great sleep and a good tomorrow. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming by. Time flies and you're having fun with randos on the internet. Let's see. Robert Emerson says hi, LJ. Chris West says hi, LJ. Kim says skull indeed. And Paul Romney just joined. LJ says hi, everyone. That's my wife's very cheerful. And there's her glasses lens. I was drinking rye, but my wife shoved chocolate cake in my mouth, which I'm not complaining about, but it does mean I need milk. Which means I'm sort of getting a mix of elements now. So, Kim says, Chris's maps make regular appearances in my Star Wars games. Yeah. I mean, obviously they're not officially Star Wars maps, but they'll certainly do the trick. And one of the nice things about them not being officially Star Wars maps is maybe you're playing Starfinder now and need a map. So,
how much of that rye have you had?
2 mugs full. It was closer to, I mean, skull. Mostly, sweetheart, I'm just blathering because I've been on for an hour and 4 minutes. Kim seems to have run out of questions to ask me. And as a result, I have nothing to talk about.
Maybe you should get off then.
But I've got 14 people watching me, so.
I see.
Our height was 18, for those of you that are curious. But people come, people go. So, I mean, it's tomorrow everywhere in the continental U.S., but here and, like, Alaska. So, yeah, it is at this point pretty late, and I might. Rye, and there was much rejoicing, says Casey Rift. Indeed. Uh-oh. Gingerbread kaiju. No, you know I can't talk to people with cake in my mouth.
Mm-hmm. You got milk. Deep in the woods, there's a band of small fairies. When you walk unwary at night. I started a little low.
Okay, now I can talk. Kim Preston says, Starfinder 2, just waiting for the group to finish making characters. Hurrah for indecision. I have a whole series of posts on my blog about my process for making what ended up being a half-orc inquisitor for my wife's Reign of Winter campaign. So I certainly understand how that process can go. And that's for a group that actively decided to not plan our characters together. Now, we're all veteran role players, and we're all pretty familiar with the D20 system, so we can have a non-optimized group and get through an AP just fine, but it's just funny that we've got a human fighter, a half-elf magus, a gnome swashbuckler, and a half-orc inquisitor, which is as close to a healer as we've got, and he is not, and he's an inquisitor.
Not a healer in sight.
Not a healer in sight. Jacob Blackman came out and visited for a while, and he played a healer, and that was super useful. But nope, not now. We have an half-orc NPC with a healing kit. That's about as close as we get. I'm literally having my wife's stuffed cake in my mouth. LOL, cake. There's much more rejoicing. Chris, does a body good? Wing Trip. I think that's the plan. Yeah.
You know they can see that, right?
Well, but I don't know if you're watching this video later. I don't know that you will bother. No. Oh, God. Not the boar worms. I don't know, officer. She seems so normal. Yeah, we're down to 12 folks. I suspect on a Friday. I hope on a Friday night, most of you have other stuff to be doing. So let's not try and push this all the way to midnight. I really appreciate everyone coming by and saying hi. I hope you enjoyed watching me drink milk, eat cake, and talk about gaming. And I hope you all have a happy weekend. And I really, yes, LJ is clearly shutting me up by shoving cake in my mouth, and I'm gonna bow to this plan before she starts putting bigger bites in. And thank you so much for everyone for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. It makes a big difference. I value all of you who bother to come say hi and wish me happy birthday. It makes a difference. So I hope everyone has a good weekend, and I will see you all later.
Bye.
You are very, Matt R. Thanks for hanging with us. You're very welcome. Thanks for hanging with me. I'll talk to you all later, and I may end up doing these again. We'll see. Good night, folks.